If you're struggling with depression and erectile dysfunction, today I'm going to give you 5 ways to deal with it. The fifth one is probably the most misunderstood part of erectile dysfunction. Hit the like button and subscribe so you can get videos every week to keep helping you with your journey. Alright guys, let's get started. So I know that one of the big challenges that comes with ED is often depression. And it's really hard to address ED without also addressing depression. And it's something that I personally battled with for a long time. It took me years of struggling with depression before I finally overcame it. And it's a really scary thing because it can take you right to the brink of ending your life. I dealt with suicidal thoughts a lot. I get a lot of messages from guys who are dealing with suicidal stuff. And even if you aren't quite at that point, depression can really make a big impact on your life. And oftentimes it's more of an impression on your life than the ED itself. So the first thing is, what is depression? And depression is just a mood disorder that typically causes feelings of sadness that are prolonged and oftentimes diminishes your interest in engaging with life. And so, like, one of the major characteristics of it is just that it's really low energy. When you're depressed, you just don't want to do anything. And so the first way that we can deal with depression is to do things that are very high energy. So I recommend vigorous exercise. I'm talking really get yourself sweating and moving and just anything you can do to really move your body. It's a great counteraction for depression. If you're looking for free things to do, there's one thing I really recommend is Freeletics. It's an app that you can download. It's completely free they have a paid version, but there's a free version. It's just very intense body weight exercises. Literally, for most of them, all you need is the phone. Anything CrossFit, HIIT training, anything like that can be really helpful. And it's just the point of it is literally just to sort of energize yourself. This is kind of counterintuitive in life, but the more energy you put out, the more energy you have. So if you feel like you don't have much energy, the most helpful thing you can do is actually to expend every bit of energy that you have. So the next thing I want to talk about is structure. And this is something I struggled with, and I was not a person who dealt well with structure. I didn't like confinement or anything of any type in my life. And it led to really, really, really bad depression. And so what do I mean when I say structure? What I mean is that you should have routines and habits, things that you can rely on. So you should get up at the same time every day. You should exercise at the same time every day. When you turn these things into habits, it becomes so much easier to do them when you don't feel like it. So if you have a habit that you've been doing for 3 months of exercising and you don't want to exercise that day, the habit is going to overpower the thoughts about not exercising. And that's a really, really helpful thing when you're dealing with depression. Because what depression tends to do is break down any habits that we do and make us want to do as little as possible. So if you're not very good with structure, you're not really good with self-accountability, one thing I would recommend is there's a book called The Power of Habit. It's really good about it teaches you how to deal with creating new habits, what makes habits stronger. And then it also talks about just why habits are very helpful. And you can also rely on other people. So if you have something that you really want to do, have somebody that checks in on you every day and asks you, did you exercise today? And a little thing like that can actually really help make a big difference if that's something you struggle with. That's a really good segue into the next thing is when you're depressed, one of the things that people tend to do is isolate. They self-isolate. And this is one of the biggest mistakes that you can make. And I know it because I've done it myself, but I can tell you that the more time that you spend with other people when you're depressed, the less depressed you're going to be. Spending time with other people is just something that naturally helps us feel better. We are social creatures. Monkeys are social creatures. That's where we all came from. And so you have to really force yourself to do this. There's a saying about friendship that the best 2 things about it are that it multiplies your happiness and it divides your sorrows. And I can tell you this has been very true from my experience. So spend time with people that you love. If you can't see them in person because of COVID or because they don't live close to you, get on Skype or FaceTime or a Zoom call, whatever it is, and just get yourself some sort of social interaction. Do not spend all of your time alone. The next key for dealing with depression is stop avoiding intimacy. This is another really big one. So if you have ED and you are single, it's really common for guys to want to avoid relationships until they overcome their ED. And this is a humongous mistake. And if you're in a relationship and you're not talking to your partner about this problem, you're also doing yourself a big disservice. So erectile dysfunction is a problem that stems from relationships. I know everybody wants to solve it on their own because they don't want to have to go through the embarrassment of feeling like, oh no, I couldn't get it up. But it's really, really important that you address this issue with other people. If you are avoiding intimate relationships, the loneliness that you are creating by avoiding those relationships is far outweighing the pain of getting rejected by someone because of ED. I promise you. I've been through both sides of it, and I can tell you that it is way more painful to cause yourself isolation. The isolation is something that will push you so far down the depression hole, it gets really hard to come out of it. And this brings us to the last point, and this is by far the most important one. And that is that your ED is not creating your depression. I know it seems like it is. I know that you think in your mind that I'm depressed because I have erectile dysfunction. But you have spent less than a few hours, most likely, of time actually trying to get an erection with someone, and it didn't go well, and then being embarrassed. What you've spent a tremendous amount, hundreds, probably thousands of hours on it, depending on how long you've been dealing with this problem, is that your mind and your thoughts have been churning over this problem and analyzing and being mean to yourself. Why do I have this problem? What's wrong with me? I didn't deserve this. And all the things that come with it. I'm really familiar with these. I spent years of my life doing this to myself, and I can tell you that it is absolute torture. And so if you want to make your life easier, you want to pull yourself out of depression, you want to make things as good for yourself as possible before even dealing with the ED, is to learn how to stop making your thoughts torture yourself. So right now, I want you to think of a pink elephant. So if you were able to think of that pink elephant, what that means is that you had control over your thoughts. And what you're dealing with right now is a bunch of patterns in your mind that they're really well worn in your neural pathways. The neural pathways are very, very deep, and they're used to firing together. So you have a bunch of habits of thinking this way over and over and over again, which means that it's going to be hard to break them. But you have to put effort into doing it, because if you can start recognizing, I'm just thinking about things that are making me miserable, and you start putting your focus on something else, you'll feel better. And if you can feel better while still having erectile dysfunction, dealing with the things that cause the ED are way easier to deal with, because ED most of the time is mental emotional. So for your own health, the most important thing that you can do for yourself is to start recognizing how your mind is torturing you about the ED. It's way worse than the actual experience of having ED. So one way to deal with this is to be grateful. And everyone who's watching this video has something to be grateful about. If it's nothing other than the fact that you have access to the internet, which is the largest store of entertainment and information that's ever existed in humanity, it means you probably have electricity. It means that you have food over your head, or you have food over your head? It means that you have a roof over your head. It means that you have food in your belly. It means you have access to electricity, running water. These are things that kings and queens didn't have 100 years ago. Right now, you are living a more majestic life than almost anyone in human history. So you have things to be thankful about. You have friends. You have people who care about you. You have people who love you. Find ways to be appreciative and start pulling yourself out of this. It is a mental, emotional game. And the more that you train your mind, the more helpful it will be in overcoming your ED. Let's be honest, this is a YouTube video. There's only so much help I can give you through a video. If you're looking for more support than that, there's a link down below on how to get a hold of me. Schedule a strategy session, let's talk about what's going on. All right, thanks.